Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special podcast from GameLuster.com. Today, we are talking to On to the End developers. I'm your host, Nima, and I'm joined by two talented game designers from 2TonStudios, and we are going to talk about their upcoming game, On to the End, a cinematic, handcrafted platformer coming up soon on Steam, PS4, Xbox One, and on Switch. So, if you wouldn't mind, you guys, let's introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about your game.
Sure.
Sure. My name's Steven, and I guess that's Sarah.
Yeah, I'm Sarah. Hi.
We're a husband and wife dev team.
Yeah.
We've been working on Under the End for a while now.
Yeah.
Under the End is, we think of it as it's a cinematic platformer in the style of an action combat game. So if you kind of like think about that, you have kind of like the pacing and tone and mood of like an Inside, but you have elements like deep combat and engaging encounters and stuff like you'd have in an action combat game. So
Right. We don't really fit well into one genre.
right, exactly, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so there's not. It's kind of like it's like we sometimes joke with people, like they're like, "What genre is it?" And we kind of say like, "Well, it's the Under the End genre because it doesn't really fit. There's not another game out there that really fits exactly like it." So we're kind of proud of that, and yeah.
We took inspiration from so many.
Yeah, we did. Like Punch-Out inspired a lot of the combat, and then Inside, Limbo, Below, a bit of Dark Souls, but more like mood and tone rather than systems and mechanics.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's definitely a very unique looking game, and the combat is really amazing. There's this phrase that you used on the Steam page and the official website called a handcrafted platformer. I was wondering, can you elaborate on the handcrafted? What does that mean? What does that entail exactly?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple aspects to it. One, I think anything handcrafted is about, the passion and the love you put into it, where every detail matters and everything has a place and a reason for being there. So that's a big part of it. So there's a lot of lore in the game that no one will probably ever know about, but is there to add body and color to the experience. And then there's the technical side of it, right? The game is actually hand painted. So we came up with a system for rendering all the art in the game. So all the environments are drawn in the engine using simple planar polygons. We actually hired a contractor to do that work for us. And so Sarah and I work in the engine and draw every rock and every tree and all the landscapes by hand individually. So a lot of games are made using what are called like room kits, set pieces, and level designers assemble those together, and instead Sarah and I hand drew everything.
Right. If you zoomed out,
Yeah.
we could basically show the game as one long canvas.
That's exactly right.
All of the what we call them rooms.
Yeah.
And just how they would line up and make one huge map that really was drawn start to finish
Yeah.
by hand.
Yeah, like a 100-foot canvas, 1 foot high. That's kind of like how we think about it.
On to the End has such a unique and challenging gameplay, beautiful art style, and a deep story. Which aspect of the game was the initial spark for development? Which part did you have the idea for working on first?
It really was the combat system. And I guess you could say hand in hand, it was also the art style, because we kind of knew we wanted a minimalist art style, but it really all centered around combat.
Yeah, like we actually started, and for the first year of the game, it was like a white rectangle representing snow,
Right,
for the ground. And then the father, who ended up being the main character, fighting against this other creature. Actually, if you go way back to like Tigsaurus, you'll see like this early creature has like this mace.
Right.
And it was just like those two guys fighting each other. And actually, initially, like Sarah would be on the keyboard controlling the enemy, and then I would have the controller controlling the father. And we would just try out ideas like movement, attacks, and like, how can we kind of build layers into the system? How can there always be risk and reward to all the actions? We had lots of ideas we chucked out, right?
It's gone through so many iterations.
Yeah. We had a lot of stuff. Like we had power-up moves. We had like charging, sprinting, you could kick guys. And we always wanted to make sure anything we did add wasn't just there to be there.
Right.
Like we never want something like if either Sarah or I starts a sentence about a design idea saying, it would be cool if, but don't have any reason for the coolness. Like if it's only just cool, then we normally take it away because it needs to have multiple layers to it. It needs to fit into multiple scenarios. And ultimately it needs to be something the player feels really like engaged with and smart for discovering and mastering.
Right. And it really did take us a long time.
Yeah, about a year.
To get here. Maybe even more.
Yeah.
But at least a year.
Yeah.
Of playing, testing.
Yeah. Showing it to friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. How long have you been working on 2TN?
I think when it's all said and done, it'll be 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and before that, we had a couple years of just really learning Unity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Getting better at art and animation and game design and all the stuff that goes into game design.
But then once we kind of settled on 2, it's been about 4 years.
Yeah, which is crazy to just like say out loud.
We're so tired.
So you talked a little about some of the inspirations for the game, like Punch-Out and Dark Souls. What was the inspiration for the atmosphere of the game and the story?
We love talking about this aspect, really. So, like in terms of the art style, I guess we definitely
atmosphere.
Yeah, atmosphere and kind of that. Like we really wanted to just create something, I guess that the player could feel immersed in, that they could kind of get lost in. And this might sound weird, but like when I watch like the old Star Wars movies, the thing I thought was coolest about them was not just like what Luke or Obi-Wan or Han are going through, but what's going on in the background. And like, you always want to like, oh man, I wish I could go see that as well as following the main story. And so we try to put that into all of the environments and atmosphere. Like we always try to have cool stuff and history and lore in the backgrounds that both act as places for the creatures that you meet, that they live, and places that used to be there that, have crumbled down or are no longer around.
And we really were inspired by a lot of our real world
Absolutely,
travels.
Yeah.
Iceland and Scotland, Turkey.
Yeah.
We both grew up in Canada, so even, trips we've done up north, Ontario, snowy landscapes.
Yeah. So a lot of things, like often when we're out hiking, we like to kind of get away from things, like we kind of pick a destination and then try and figure out how to get there. Rather than doing like a tour guided stuff. And when you do that, you kind of have these experiences where you get lost or you're not sure of the right way. And so, that creates these like moments where you kind of imagine like, well, okay, we're in the modern kind of, we're in modern day. So there's lots of things that can help us. But what would happen if we had to really rely on our wits and we didn't have like GPS and all this kind of stuff? Like, what would that adventure be like? And what would it have been like, 300-400 years ago to walk through this landscape? And so those kind of ideas and thought exercises like inspire a lot of the kind of things we put in the game.
And there's a good amount of time in the game that you spend in caves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And part of that came from real life too, just wanting it to feel claustrophobic, uncomfortable.
Yeah. How the darkness plays tricks on your mind, like you're
not sure what's around the corner.
Yeah, like shadows. Like it really is weird. If you've ever been in a truly dark space,
cave or
like a tunnel or cave, and like one time we did in Hawaii and we had like this crappy little flashlight. It's scary. Like it's there's reasons why in olden times, like the Vikings made up a lot of myths about things that lived in the mist, and there's always been kind of this fear of the dark amongst humans, and so we try to play on a lot of that.
You talked a little about the story that's in the background about the other races. How much of that story do we explore in the game? How much of it will we discover? Or will the story be more personal to the father character and his journey?
Got it. Yeah, I didn't really answer the question about the story. Sorry about that. So the story is, like I have the philosophical answer here, and then there's kind of like the direct answer. But I'll give you a bit of both. So Sarah and I really love games that focus on the player, their experience, rather than the character you control. So the story has elements and kind of layers to it and stuff, but it's more about how the player decides to make it home. Like the actions they take. Do they kill everything? Do they try to help creatures? Do they try to use items? Do they avoid fights? That's kind of the story. The story is born out of the player's actions, and all the characters have a reason for being there. They all like live in a certain place in the world for a reason. But they're not there forcing a story upon you. We are okay with players. Some players we feel won't get the story. They might not understand exactly the nuance and the details, and that's okay because it's about how they made it through it, how their actions ultimately made their experience different than, say, your experience or my experience or Sarek's experience. Having said that, we do have a lot of, or we do have some explicit storytelling through items mostly. Right. So the items you get explain to you the different creatures that are involved. Actually, in the opening training scene that's in the demo, if you open your backpack there, the character that's a memory the hero is going through. That, that's your wife and your daughter. So some people don't know if it's a boy or a girl. Is that your daughter or your son? It's your daughter. That you're married, so you have a wedding band. And it kind of like allows you to discover the story and the kind of little bit of the context if you're interested in that. But it's very much about the player.
Right, it's not in your face.
Yeah, it's not in your face. We want to tell a story that only games can tell. Games nowadays use a lot of techniques from literature and film to tell stories. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, a lot of super talented people doing that stuff, and a lot of those stories are excellent. But there's also opportunities to tell stories that don't use those techniques, that use techniques that only games can use, and those those tend to be more interactive and action based. Yeah.
Right.
How does the father character fit into the universe? What's his place? What's his relationship to the other races and creatures that he encounters? How does he fit into the story from the player's point of view?
Sure, that's a great question. So we it might sound weird, but we didn't want the father to be like the star of the journey. Like, he's not saving the day.
Well, meaning he's not like a hero.
Yeah, he's not like a typical, he's not a hero trying to save the world or the galaxy. He's not like a super warrior or something.
He's just a dude.
So we tried to take the idea of, hey, you're out walking to the forest, right? And you come across this event. What do? So let's take like a random example. You're out hiking through the forest and you come across a bear. What do? Do you like run? Do you try and give it food? Do you try and attack it? Like, how do you deal with that situation? And then we just basically put that in a whole bunch of different contexts throughout the journey.
Adding
creatures, giving reason for them to being there. So like, in the demo, you come across these creatures. They're actually like two different clans are warring with each other. And the father happens to like come out of a cave, and he's in the middle of the aftermath of a battle. And there's still some creatures around, and then they're like, "Who's this human?" They attack the father. And now it's up to the player to deal with that situation.
And it's really just what he encounters on his way home.
Exactly.
He might not know what this fight is about, but you still have to get through it to get home.
Exactly. Yeah. And what kind of person are you when you come to that situation? Is your first instinct to kill the thing in front of you? Or is it to maybe take a moment and think about, are there other ways to do this? Or even, can I help these creatures? Can I take a side, so to speak? So we just thought that was cool. Like, that's what we love about going out and doing adventures on our own, is that kind of, you're not sure the right or wrong thing. But
right, and there isn't necessarily
exactly.
right or wrong
That's
thing.
Exactly right, yeah. So, it's kind of a weird way to describe, because, like in stories and games, recently at least, they have, like, they're very concerned with you getting a story and having a very specific experience. And when they add variance to it, it's like you can do A or B, but it's definitely like an A or B, right? Like, there's very distinct paths. And that wasn't really what we wanted it to be about. We wanted it to be more about just the player trying to get home and overcoming these situations and having these situations feel like they're bigger than the player, that the world is in flight and the father happens to be going through it.
Makes sense.
It sounds like me as a player, I don't know what's going on in the world exactly. It seems like the father doesn't know either. So we really...
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much the case. And your father can kind of make guesses and assumptions. And there's some places that it's more direct and more obvious as to what's going on. But, like real life. Like, we often thought about, like, how let's take, like, meet a creature or like an alien comes and visits, or you meet someone in a different country and you don't speak the same language. Like, how do you communicate? Right? And so we played a lot on that. Like, you don't know each other, so how do you deal with these situations? We wanted to kind of have that experience.
Right. Keep
for
some
players.
of the mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely not all explained.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Since there isn't any direct storytelling, it's more environmental and atmospheric. I'm guessing we don't see many dialogues or voiceover in On to the End. Am I right?
There is. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's voice acting.
Yeah.
And creatures.
Yeah. And then Sarah and I did some voice acting in the forms of like grunts and breathing and stuff like that for the characters. But yeah, there's no
pop-ups.
Yeah, there's no walls of text or dialogue trees or dialogue exchanges. It's more like Inside or Limbo or Below, if you've played those games, where the story is told mostly through the environment and through the actions, between the player and the world, or the main character of the world, or the main character and other creatures.
Tell us a bit about music of Unto the End. Are you guys done with sound design and music writing? What was the mood that you were going for, and how did it pan out in the end?
No, it's pretty. It's
fully developed, yes.
Yeah. It's really more atmospheric.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we. So if you look at like a Dark Souls, the music is very orchestral and very big and grand, and it actually, if you've ever struggled in a Dark Souls boss fight, a good technique is to turn the music off, because the music is intentionally like very high tension. It makes you at least makes me very nervous. So we wanted.
So we're the opposite.
Yeah, we're the opposites. Our music is very atmospheric, and we put a lot of emphasis. With our sound designer, Francesco Meglio, did all of the sound as well as some music.
And he's fantastic.
He's been amazing. And then Johnny Niddle is our music composer. And so he both did musical tracks as well as really had some very cool approaches to generating, I guess I would say, a sound library or a collection of instruments. So he actually took apart an old grand piano that he left outside for a year. And got a lot of sounds from that teardown.
Right, because we knew we wanted it to be gritty.
Yeah, and very organic.
Yeah.
And very distinct, right? And so it's a very long-winded way of saying that we wanted the emphasis to be on combat and on the creatures you're engaging with. So there's a lot of emphasis on the father's breathing, the father's state, in whether he's in combat, whether he's traveling, whether his sword's out or not, whether he's wounded, and then the creatures as well. So I don't know how far you got in the demo, but near the end of the demo, there's an exchange with a creature on a bridge, and he vocalizes, in a way to communicate with the father. But you don't know what he's saying, and that's the intent. That he's clearly trying to communicate something to you, and it's more about reading his body language than his words.
Awesome. So how much more are you guys gonna work on the game? when can we expect the release date and the final product?
You can definitely expect it this year. The game is pretty much done, and it's kind of in the hands of others at this point. And we're kind of just waiting for that to all happen.
But we'll be announcing the release date soon.
Soon, yes, yeah. We will be announcing a release date soon. We're really excited actually to kind of officially tell everyone when it's going to be coming out, so people can kind of mark it on their calendar, so to speak. We really appreciate. We have some people that ping us and say, "Hey, I've been following this game since the beginning," and that means a lot to Sarah and I, because it has been a long journey, and I think games are in general taking up more and more time, and they take longer to make than ever before, and so we really appreciate people sticking with that. So yeah.
Tell us a little more about Unto the End's demo that's available on Steam.
I mean, one thing to note is like the demo. We really love the demo. It's a slice of the game, so the demo is not like a special one-off. It's part of the game. The demo has a lot of fights in it, and we're really proud of the combat system. We're also proud of the fact that you don't always have to fight, and the encounter at the end of the demo is an example of that. But there's quite a few of those types of encounters scattered throughout the game. We wanted it to be a game that you could kind of approach in different ways and had a lot of replay ability to it. That was focused around combat mastery, but also rewarded exploration, taking your time observing the actions of the creature, reading the item descriptions to figure out how you can make use of them.
Observant player will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it can be as successful, we feel, as the player with great reflexes, right? So that's an important thing to us. We spent a ton of time on those things, and we did it with the understanding that some people might not discover them, but that's okay. Like we took that risk because we felt it made a better game. And yeah, ultimately that's what excited about when we make games is taking risks, having a distinct perspective, trying to do something different.
Right. And it might not be for everyone, and that's okay.
And that's okay too, right? That's kind of one of the advantages of being an indie and trying to make a piece of art. When you try and go after a piece of art, I think the best art, it does have perspective, and not everyone necessarily agrees with it, and that's good. That's a good thing. I think you want creations like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Let me ask you this: how much of the game did we see in the demo? How much more will there be?
How much?
Yeah.
The demo is a very, very small slice of the game.
Wow.
So the demos. It's really just a small little slice of the game. So there's lots more to the game, and the journey, has a lot more in it. We picked that area because initially it was for a conference, right? It was for EGX when we first showed it, and combat was different.
That's why we started the demo with the training.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Not how the game.
Yeah, the full game doesn't start with the training. The training is something you can go back to at any time from any rest fire. It actually has some kind of little Easter eggs in it as well. Things you can. It has replayability in the training itself. It's actually some achievements that are attached to.
But it's another
training.
way that we didn't want to force players into something.
Absolutely.
That, you have to choose to go into that training the first time you played the game.
Yeah, and not everyone likes training, right? Like some people like to just just do it entirely on their own, and they want to struggle and learn, and they don't want to be told how to play at all, and that's cool. Like we're totally fine if that's how people want to play, but also if someone wants to go into the training dozens of times and just practice, that's also totally fine with us. So we wanted to very much leave it in the player's hands.
That's what I did. I was in the training for hours.
Awesome.
It has such a hard gameplay to master and go forward in the game. It becomes necessary to go back to the training sometimes, and
yes,
it's
absolutely. Like we approached it kind of like in Punch Out, how Little Mac. I don't know if you played Punch Out, but Little Mac has all of his moves from the beginning. And it's kind of about the player learning how to use when to block, when to duck, when to dodge, when to punch high, low, etc.
Right, from the beginning, you have all the moves.
Yeah. And so it is very much about you figuring out how to use them and
reading and reacting in the moment
to
each encounter, because they're all different.
Yeah.
And it's not about memorizing a pattern.
Right. Yeah. Like we built the AI so that two things we did early on. We knew we didn't want a Dark Souls save model, so we save at regular checkpoints like Inside or Hard to Play Drifter. And the emphasis is on getting back into a fight. Like you die and you get back into the fight. You die, you get back into the fight. And then we wanted to make it so that the enemies had different tactics. Like when you'd fight them, they wouldn't always follow the exact same routine. And so that it always kind of felt challenging and novel and stuff like that. To as great an extent as possible.
Right.
So we definitely didn't realize we didn't pass the Turing test and realize artificial intelligence. Just the two of us. But we tried very hard to make it that enemies feel alive and smart and stuff like that.
Does the enemies gain more power and become more powerful while our character stays at the same power level as you progress through the game?
And I would say the enemies get more skillful at combat as you go through the game, but
because just as we hope you as the player are getting more skillful.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That we tried very much to pace the game based on every encounter teaches you something, and if you get through that encounter, then you'll be more prepared for the next encounter. And every once in a while, we throw an opponent at you where you have to use puts more emphasis on duck or more emphasis on blocking or more emphasis on crowd control and using your spin bash and your dagger and stuff. But yeah, the enemies don't. It's hard for us because we made the game and know all the enemies inside and out. But the intention wasn't to make the game harder and harder. It was more about novelty and challenge, keeping the player always engaged and always having to kind of learn something new.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt because each encounter itself is almost like a puzzle.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Yeah, where you are kind of trying to figure out their strengths and weaknesses and where you can.
And it might seem impossible at first,
right?
But for example, if you pick up a spear, a fight could be over pretty quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good point. And so, how to phrase it? Okay, so there is no opponent in the game that does super damage or has superpowers, like throws fire or lightning, or like there's no enemies that have like insane health bars, or like every enemy, I think this is true, with the right weapons and technique can be killed in like 3 or 4 hits. And it's all just really about your skills as a player and how do you like use the things you've been given to overcome them. So
and reacting in that moment to
exactly.
block high, you notice block low.
Countering and exactly.
All right, so are you guys planning on working on a new project after Onto the End's release?
That's a good one.
Yeah, we're gonna take a nap first.
Yeah. We have tons of ideas. We're always talking about what we'd like to do next and where we could go next. I think a lot of it will depend on how Onto the End does. We're really proud of it. We sure hope people like it. If this makes us too artistic, I don't know. We want to. We feel it's important when you make a game to kind of have a perspective and have a voice. And if no one likes the game and doesn't like our voice, then it would be hard to do new games and more games. Because that's not our goal. Our goal is not to just like make a fun, entertaining thing for everyone. It's to try and make something that people really love and really kind of can sink into. So
right. So we'll see.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, we hope so. We really hope so. We hope so. Yes, we'll definitely take a little bit of a break before we do anything, and then kind of start going on the next one. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely waiting to see what you guys will do after this. I'm looking forward to Onto the End, and I can't wait to play the full game. Anything else you guys want to mention before we end the interview?
Just thanks a lot. If you are listening, it really helps. Sarah and I are just a small studio, so it really helps if you wish list the game on Steam. If you have a friend that you think might be into it, like tell them about it. Thanks so much. Yeah, just really, it's just a lot of fun to chat.
Thank you for joining me. Yes, you can find Onto the End on Steam. The demo is still available. You can play a small slice of the game. Thank you, Steven and Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Thanks so much.
And thank you guys for listening to GameLuster Talks to Onto the End Devs. We had a nice little chat with Steven and Sarah from 2TonStudios. We are hoping to see Onto the End in its full glory very soon, and hope you guys enjoyed too. Thank you and goodbye.